Hello and welcome to yet another episode of History Time. It is summer, the schools have closed, and you need to wonder about where to take the children. Have you ever thought of the zoo in Vandalur? You must go there if you have not done so. The zoo itself has a long history because the Chennai Zoo is the oldest in the whole country. What is the story behind it? Let us take a look. The first person to have a menagerie or a collection of animals in the city was the Nawab of Arcot. We know of it from historic records, and in Triplicane there is a street called Puli Bone Bazaar. What is Puli Bone Bazaar? Puli means tiger. Bonu in Telugu means a cage, and bazaar was a market. We know from the records of the 1750s that right in the heart of Triplicane there was a tiger belonging to the Nawab which was kept in a cage, and it stood in the middle of a market. So we know about the Nawab's Zoo. And then in 1853, the then Nawab was convinced to hand over his entire collection to the East India Company. The man who did it was the then surgeon of Madras Presidency, Edward Balfour. Balfour was also the director of the Madras Museum, and therefore he housed the Nawab's collection of animals where the museum was. At that time, the museum functioned from College Road in the campus that is today the Directorate of Public Instruction. And so the zoo also remained there. In 1863, it was decided to shift the zoo to People's Park. Where or what was People's Park? Today, it doesn't even exist. But in 1859, the then governor, Sir Charles Trevelyan, decided that there must be an enormous green lung in the city. He earmarked 116 acres of land close to where the central station is today, and that is where People's Park came up. People's Park in its heyday had 11 ponds, 5.5 miles of road, a bandstand, a swimming bath, and 2 tennis courts. It was a phenomenon, and that is where the zoo was shifted in 1863. It became an enormous attraction and people loved to go there. And right from then till the 1960s and 70s, it was a star attraction of Madras city. Whenever people came to visit the city, one of the first places that they went to was the zoo located next to Central Station. It was a small facility. It only covered around 11 acres in expanse, nothing beyond that. But what was there was a very interesting zoo. Poems were written about the zoo. In 1895, there was a Tamil poem published, People's Park, Vainadai Chindu. Two young lovers walked down from Georgetown to Mylapore. In those days, people walked everywhere. They didn't have buses or trams or metro rail or autos or Ola or Uber or any of those things. So these two people are walking down, and when they come to People's Park, the young man turns to his beloved and begins describing the birds and the animals over there. It is such a long list. And when you read it, you wonder at the number of names that we have in Tamil language for animals and birds. Today, everything that flies is a bird, everything that walks on 4 legs is an animal, but then every individual species has been named in that poem. It's a phenomenal piece of work, and it indicates the popularity of the zoo. It also shows what else was there. There were swings, there was a roundabout, and there was a bandstand where music was played every Tuesday and every Saturday and on all evenings for the English people to come and relax and listen to. So those then were the attractions in the late 1800s. The zoo continued to flourish, but then in the 1940s there was a very tragic episode in the history of the zoo. Second World War was going on, and for a while it looked as though the Japanese would invade India. The governor of Madras, Sir Arthur Hope, in 1942, seems to have lost his nerve, and he made an announcement that it was imminent that there would be an attack on Madras city, and those people who were living here without any essential purpose should leave the city immediately. There was panic among the citizens, and the city began to empty itself. It became a ghost town. At this point of time, the government servants had a question. What if the Japanese invaded? What if they came to the zoo? And what if they let loose the wild animals? What would happen then? It was therefore decided to shoot all the ferocious animals dead, and the smaller animals were all transferred to E Road. The zoo remained in makeshift shelters in E Road for a good 3 years, and it was only in 1944-45, with the tide of the war changing, that the animals came back and the zoo was reopened. The question of what to do with the zoo once again continued to exercise the government. But as you all know, between a question and then a decision and then finally action, as far as government is concerned, it can be many years. And so it proved. In the 1950s, the Maharaja of Bhavnagar, who was then the governor of Madras, presented it with its first set of lions. Ellis R. Dungan, the famous American director of Tamil movies, took photographs of all the animals in the zoo, and the collection even now survives in the Madras Corporation. The zoo remained a stellar attraction, and in 1955, it celebrated its centenary. A new gate was constructed for the zoo and named after Charles Darwin, who wrote on the origin of species. Such an apt honor for the zoo to have its gate named after him. In the 1950s, we read that the entrance fee for coming to the zoo was 2 annas. 4 annas made 25 paisa, and therefore 12.5 paisa was the entrance. Children who were below the age of 12 were allowed free. When you went into the zoo, you saw the animals. You had an elephant. If you pressed money into its trunk, it saluted you. You had swings, you had roundabouts, you had a toy train. And then there was a beautiful pond in which you could go for a boat ride for 2 annas per person. If you didn't want to go by boat, you could cross over to the other side by means of a bridge. During Pongal, especially on Kanum Pongal day, the zoo would be crowded to bursting capacity. It was one of the 3 great attractions of Madras of the 1950s, 60s and 70s. The first was always the museum, known as Seta College because everything was dead over there. Next came the zoo, which was known as Uir College because all the animals were alive and thriving. And then came Bomma College, which was the College of Arts and Crafts, which is today known as the Government College of Fine Arts, located in Egmore, because you had statues and paintings and all over there. So it was known as Bomma College. In 1965-66, a Tamil movie was made called Kakkum Karangal, starring S.S. Rajendran and Vijay Kumari. There is a lovely song in that film, Allittandu Kaaleduthu Adimel Adiyeduthu. That song is shot entirely in the Madras Zoo. You can go even now to YouTube and take a look at the song, and you will find that there is such a panoramic view, and there is a beautiful cinematographic depiction of all the animals that are there. Talks continued right through the 1950s about shifting the zoo. At one point of time, the government thought it could move the zoo to the Gindi Gardens where the governor's bungalow was. That didn't happen, but Gindi got a Gindi National Park in 1958, inaugurated by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. It was finally only in 1976 that the shift of the zoo became imminent. The Southern Railways was in expansion mode. It needed land behind Central Station for laying its new tracks, and it began to request the government to do something. And that is when the government decided that it would shift the zoo to Vandalur. It gave the zoo 1,495 acres. The zoo here was 11 acres, and there it was shifting into something that was monumental. The only problem was it was all scrub land. There were hardly any trees. But the forest department and the local villagers worked with a vim, and in 4 years the entire place was transformed. In 1979, work began on shifting the animals. Finally, the zoo was ready in 1985 and was inaugurated by the then Chief Minister, Thiru M.G. Ramachandran. The place was named after Arinyar Anna, the first Dravidian Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, and so it flourishes. It remains even today one of the greatest attractions of the city. It is one of the largest zoological parks in the whole of Asia. Even the website is so professionally done and beautiful to look at. If you haven't been to the zoo, this is the season to go there. Do so and then let me know. If you like this episode, mark a like on it, share it, and subscribe to this channel. I promise I will be back with you in a few days with fresh episodes. Bye for now.